Analytics panel, and I thought that we would just kind of get started as a way of sort of introducing everybody to allow them just to have a couple moments to say who they are, what they do at Penn State, and you know, what some of their background is. So just go down the line.
Okay, yeah, I'm Bill Goff. I'm a senior lecturer in the economics department. I teach about 2,000 students a year currently, which is kind of interesting. I become a manager and a bureaucrat managing 20 graders, 4 TAs, and shuffling a whole lot of paper and electrons and such. I currently do research in economic education, which is a useful thing given all my students. As I was saying to one of my TAs looking over my classroom, I said, look at all that data.
Wow. I'm Janet May Dillon, and I started my career at Penn State Du Bois. My career with Penn State at Penn State Du Bois as a math instructor. And I came to University Park to join the World Campus in 1999. That was right, the World Campus started around 97, so I spent many years there when the World Campus was getting up and going. And it's certainly a very well-established machine now, and is doing wonderful things, I think, for the university and for online education in general. About a year and a half ago, I moved out of the World Campus into a team that we call Educational and Institutional Analytics. And that was sort of the marriage of the evaluation work that I was doing with the World Campus and institutional data research that had been formerly housed in marketing research of outreach. So our this new team, Educational and Institutional Research, EIA, provides all official data to outreach. All official data other than financial. Financial data comes from a different unit.
Hi, I'm Mike Dorris. I'm the Executive Director of what's called the Office of Planning and Institutional Assessment, and it's a pleasure to be here. So, I have probably less knowledge about this topic than, well, not probably, any of my three co-presenters here, but I'll tell you, you can sort of forget what the title of my office is. Maybe you forgot it already. But the field that I work in is called institutional research, sort of generically. That's what it's called in the higher education business. And so we're kind of the data people in universities. So for my whole, really, adult working life, I've been working with data. My first job out of college was I was a statistician at the United States Census Bureau, and I've done that kind of work all my life. So this is like a really interesting evolution for me to see how data I think the uses of data are changing as we're looking at it right now within higher education. And so that's kind of the perspective that I'm bringing to this conversation. So the one other thing I was going to add was Chris asked us not to bring a lot of slides, which I think is great because I've been trying to institute a no PowerPoint rule for myself recently without success, I will add. But I thought, well, this time I'm going to do it because Chris asked us not to do a lot of it. But the one thing, if I had brought a slide, I was thinking about what I was just going to tell you about working at the Census Bureau. My first job at the Census Bureau, when I walked in there, they showed me my desk, and there was one of these adding machines on it. Not a 4-function calculator, but some of the older people here may have seen these, like that with the mechanical fingers that would go up and down, and like the banks of numbers that you would use. So that's where I started on kind of the evolution of technology for data and data processing. So I'm not telling you that to say how old I am, although I am probably the oldest person in the room, I think. But just kind of how much this whole business has changed, and it's really fascinating to see it continue to change. Right. That's more than you needed.
No, that's perfect. That's great. So I mentioned a couple of times in the last couple of sessions about how we're just starting to work on learning analytics. We're just learning about it now, and we just got this pilot project that we're starting to put together. But I think that what we've noticed as we've sort of started to survey the university is there are little pockets of people that are actually doing what would traditionally look like analytics, and I think that, Bill, you're one of those people that have used data in interesting ways to gain insight on your students, and so I wonder if you could talk about what you've done with data in your classroom and your teaching, how has this impacted your students?
Sure. Let me first talk about why I do this. I teach a difficult subject. Oftentimes I meet people, I say I'm an economist, I see them, they go like this. It's just this death and destruction. I once had someone say, oh, that's really interesting. And I didn't know what to say. So it's hard stuff, and it's actually backed up by pretty good evidence. You look at evidence how much economics students retain, it's virtually zero, which is really depressing. I mean, we take their money, we teach them, and they get nothing out of it and such. So I was kind of looking around to see who is doing a good job teaching. Turns out some of the physicists are. There's a whole body called physics education research. People like Eric Mazur at Harvard, he's got very good students, but I found out they weren't learning much. He gave an assessment that tests people's conceptual understanding of physics. One of his students said, a pre-med, highly motivated, Harvard undergrad, she asked, how should I answer this? The way you teach me or the way I think about this? And so they found ways to actually address people's deep understanding of these materials. And in many cases, they've shown 2 standard deviation learning gains. So Eric Mazur there at Harvard, he's got a very nice YouTube talk. Carl Wyman now at UBC. He used to be at Colorado at Boulder. Pretty bright guy, he's got a Nobel Prize. He did pedagogical research all his career. He was U.S. Professor of the Year 3 years after getting a Nobel Prize. That's awarded for teaching. He was Associate Science Advisor to the President of the United States for science education. He can demonstrate these 2 standard deviation learning gains, in part by using clickers in class, by asking conceptual questions and such. So I thought, maybe I'll start applying that stuff. And so I've been doing that now in this latter part of my career. So my analytics example looks like this. Before I came here, I taught at SUNY Oswego. Let me tell you a bit about the institution. The students are not as good as they are here at UP. The one-year retention rate there is about 78%. I think here it's 92%, is that?
Yeah, University of Park.
Where did you say you were?
SUNY Oswego. Okay. And so the students, you look at the overlap of SAT scores, there's not much. So I gave an exam, and I was just curious about the data on student preparation. We use Angel there as well. So on the far left-hand side, you have the exam score, first midterm. The next column is I assigned a number of articles for them to read. The idea is you have some background information. We use that in class. The cognitive scientist, Daniel William makes a point, very strong point, cognitive science. You learn if you have more information. You don't learn things individually, you build upon other things. So I assigned a lot of articles. So in that second column, how many articles the students actually clicked on in Angel? To get that was kind of expensive. I would go into Angel, the reporting part. It has a list of who clicked on that article. I would pull it out with the cut and paste it then into an Excel, then do a merge. So this took me several hours to do. The next one was I give weekly quizzes. So I was looking at the quiz average leading into the exam. And that again correlates very closely with grades. The quizzes tend to be on a Tuesday, the way I structured that class. And then I looked at Wednesday or Thursday attendance, Tuesday, Thursday class. And again, very striking difference. Finally had homeworks that were not mandatory, not graded. Not many resources there. I had a 300 student class. I wasn't going to grade it myself. That's the percent of students actually just downloaded the questions for the homeworks. And again, very highly correlated. And so I looked at this data and thought, well, now I understand why the poor students do so poorly. So I gathered all this stuff up, took it to class. One of my colleagues joked with me I was wearing black that day. It looked like a pretty somber thing. So I put this up, talked about it, didn't make a dent. Apparently the poor students knew they weren't doing very much. And it's like, why you bring this up? I know I'm not working much. So I'm in part wonder a bit about student intervention on this topic. The poor students know they're not putting in much effort and work. They're just trying to get by and such. I've done some work here. I've not done work like this yet, but I ask what their target grade is. If a student has a target grade of a C, what sort of intervention can really work? The difference it made to me, though, is I'm a lot less sympathetic toward my poor students, which is maybe a useful sort of thing to be. If I saw them working hard and trying, that'd be one thing. But they're not even making much of an effort. Well, why should I do much? And again, do economics education research, and we have some papers that find that we sometimes substitute our effort for the student's effort, and that's probably not the way it ought to be. What I'd like to have is something that would integrate clicker data. I use a large number of clicker questions from the physics education research, something like 150, 170 questions during the semester for a lot of formative assessment. I'd like to measure engagement with that. I would like to measure how well they do on a certain question, how well that comes up on quizzes, how well it comes out on the final exam for learning goals and such. It'd be great if that was integrated with exam questions so I could see how they're learning something through the semester. Again, are they engaged or not and such. Partly I'd like that to do a better course so I can understand where the failings are in the course to resurrect it. I'm a bit leery of actually using to intervene on the students. You know, if a student has a target grade of a C, I tell them they should come to class more often, do more work. Why would they care? So at any rate, that's my story on the learning analytics, what I'm doing. So it'd be great if it was something that, this was several hours worth of work to put all this together, and I want something I can just click on.
When you're using clicker questions, are you showing the students how many are getting it right and how many are getting wrong? Are you reflecting on the level of positive?
Yeah. And so my clicker question is designed to be hard. The point is, it's a very easy question. They already know the answer. Why should I ask it? Sometimes I'm surprised they know something, and then I take it out for the next semester. But a typical clicker question might maybe half the students get it right. Then we'll do a peer instruction on it. And if the class is going well, maybe it goes up to 70% then. So they're talking to each other, something George Simons was talking about today. A novice that just learned it can probably explain it better than I can. They understand the stumbling blocks. I've known this stuff for decades. I have real difficulty understanding many times what the stumbling blocks are. I have a hard time developing clicker questions because I really don't always know what is hard. Sometimes someone will just ask me something, I'll turn it into a question, and it's a great question. So it's just a hint there. So, you know, I look at the difficulty of them, I try for hard questions, and try to make a learning environment out of that.
This question is for both of you guys. I think it would be interesting to learn what OPIA and Janet, what your office does a little bit more deeply. I'm just wondering what kind of requests come to your office. Who are making those requests? What are they asking for in terms of data and analysis? And then what is it that you're producing for them to shed insight on their questions?
Oh, sure. Well, Chris did give us a heads up on this question. So I was able to look at, prepare a short list of some of the kinds of reports we do produce. We do use a JIRA, a tracking system, and we probably have over 450 issues. It's an issue tracking, but we use it to sort of monitor the requests that come into our office. And right now we're probably at about 450. And we haven't been using it all that long, for less than a year, I'd say. But our office does produce daily, weekly, monthly, semester, yearly, bi-yearly reports. We do on enrollment data, application data, prospect data, and these are for outreach activities, primarily for World Campus. It's just the largest unit within outreach, but also for continuing at Shavers Creek, the VLN, the Video Learning Network, all kinds. We do weekly summary reports on enrollments and applications. We've been trying to help outreach understand where we are in terms of our applications compared to sort of before the scandal. So we know that applications dropped a bit due to the scandal. We turned off some marketing campaigns, so we expected that to happen. But we're looking closely at are things starting to pick up. So we're looking at both prospects and application data. We look at that on a weekly basis, a bi-weekly basis, and many, many monthly application reports. We do so many application reports that we're currently inventorying them to see where are they redundant and how can we, sort of streamline some of our processes. We do a bi-weekly report to the Vice President of Outreach, Craig Weideman, for a presentation to the Board of Trustees. So he always has a current, up-to-date look at what the World Campus is up to. We do a bi-yearly report to the Faculty Senate. We do reports for the compliance officer who's in charge of the state's regulation, federal state's regulation initiative. Every state, if you want to offer distance educations in the 50 states, you need to be certified to do so or have a permission to do so. So that, and each state sets those standards very differently. It's very, very complex. I pulled out one quick little snapshot of just one little request we do for that kind of compliance. And it read like the compliance officer needed the number of students whose home state is Kansas. These were World Campus students whose home state was Kansas, in programs for the last 3 semesters, specifically in the Master of Acoustics, the Master of Health Administration, the Masters of Enterprise Architecture, the Post-Bac Certificate of Enterprise Architecture, the Bachelor's in Security and Risk Analysis. So, you know, we get these kinds of requests on a daily basis. And we also do a lot of lists so that we're able to help the advising team and business and finance be very up to date with whom they might need to contact for certain initiatives. Besides this, we do a lot of evaluation work. So that's sort of a snapshot of what our office does. I do have one of our teammates here, Jane Carey Thomas, who has been instrumental in helping us fulfill some of these requests. Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, the field I work in is called institutional research. A couple of you know what that is, several of you. I think Katie and McIntosh and Fred Loomis. You guys can check your email for the next 3 minutes here. But basically what institutional research is the use, analysis, reporting of data for the purposes of institutional management, decision-making, and planning. So what that entails is basically anything that can affect decision-making at the university. So budget planning, staffing, enrollment, setting enrollment targets, admissions, development, really anything. So our office has kind of a dual face to the world. One is our public face, and a number of the analyses that we do go through the Senate or they're made publicly available. A lot of what we do is kept on a secure website, and only people like the president and provost and deans and chancellors and department heads have access to that. So, you know, they can go on there and find out a lot of information, say about Dan Merson as an individual faculty member, what courses he's teaching, and, you know, his salary and all that kind of stuff, which is not open to the world. So there's sort of the secure aspect to what we do, but the difference in terms of what the folks at this symposium would be interested in terms of teaching and learning and students, is that what we do in institutional research is very sort of enterprise focused. It deals with either the university as a whole, or a college, or a campus, or a department, or a program, or maybe even a cohort of students. You know, we may do particular studies about adult learners, or about low-income students, or, you know, change of assignment students, or something like that. But we're really not focused on the individual student as a learner and how to improve that student's experience and outcomes. And I think that's probably a fairly true statement of people in my line of work almost anywhere you would go around the country.
So maybe just to follow up on that, what the people in your field, would they be receptive to the idea of taking some of those reports that you produce and allowing faculty and students, the people that actually own the data, essentially, allowing them to see it?
Well, it depends on the reports, again. So if and this was interesting hearing a little bit of conversation as this day went on about questions about data integrity and privacy and security and things like that, because this is something that, you know, people who work with data a lot think about this stuff all the time. In fact, we think about it so much that we don't even think about it, you know. Like the Association for Institutional Research, which is my professional association, has like 4,000 members and, you know, journals and meetings and stuff like that. We have a code of ethics, and it spells out, you know, what the responsibilities are of people who work with data, and, you know, people should be trained in the proper use and what constitutes proper statements of confidentiality and responsibility to the individual, and not to share data with third parties without authorization, and all that kind of stuff. So there's sort of like a well-developed kind of mature thinking about that doesn't exist necessarily with other people who are, you know, extremely knowledgeable in their discipline, very well intentioned, but, you know, just don't sort of have that common understanding in language. So I had to be cautious about that sort of thing. I mean, both for legal reasons and reasons of just kind of ethical behavior.
Sure.
So you mentioned the training there, and I was wondering where people are getting their training from. Is it city-based training, or do you have some in-house training?
Well, in the case of, this is maybe a little bit off topic, so just stop me, Chris. So in the case of the Association for Institutional Research, for example, one of the codes of ethics is that practitioners need to understand both their institutional policies and guidelines about the use of data and the external legal restrictions like FERPA and protections of human subjects and things like that. And so it's our responsibility, it's my responsibility as the director of an office to make sure that the folks that I'm asking to get into student transcripts or whatever, before I let them do that they've demonstrated that Penn State has programs for that. We're a big enough institution that, people can learn about FERPA. They learn about the protection of human subjects. But as the director of the unit, it's my responsibility to ensure that they've got the tools that they need. And I can't do that for the general public.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
One quick thing. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but thinking of learning analytics, we've talked to some institutions that have decided that their IR office will house that. Just curious if you in your personal opinion, do you think that's a good idea, a bad idea, not sure?
Yeah, well, Bart has a really close connection with our office, and if you went to his earlier session and Chris's session, they mentioned Alex Yin and Nick Warholak in my office actually are part of a project design team on learning analytics. So I absolutely think it's a great idea to be connected with that. We have certain kinds of expertise that would be useful, but we're not, we don't have all the expertise. So I don't really know the answer. I mean, we would be one of the places that would come to mind, I would say. And in my estimation, as I'm thinking this through, I hadn't really thought this through until you asked the question. I do think it should be somewhere, say, on the academic side of the house, as opposed to, in the IT area, or even on the business side of the house or something. Somewhere under the chief academic officer, to me, seems to make the most sense. But beyond that, what that means, I'm not, I haven't really given that enough thought.
There is the requirement of any data warehouse user that they've undergone FERPA training. And there's an additional training that data warehouse requires so that you understand the elements of the data. And in our office, probably the majority have gone through the required city training that IRB, requires.
So I guess
Andy?
Wrapped on that same kind of question, how do you get access to that data to the people that will put an analytics platform together? Because there's 3 sets of data you guys have right there. If I walked up to you and said, give me your data so I can figure out how we can use it. Right? And we don't want to spend 6 months getting Andy educated and doing, because I got my own set of data, I know how to handle it, right? But we don't want to spend all of our time. Instead of innovating, we're just checking the boxes of, he's not going to lose it, he's not going to lose it, he's not going to lose it, right? So where is the in-between there? Or is there no in-between?
I don't know you, so who are you? What's your job? Well, no, I'm not saying no. I'm saying I don't know you yet. Maybe that's a better answer.
The university defines a business case. There's a need to know for one thing. So data needs to be protected on a need to know basis to some extent.
So can we, let's continue on that. So you talked about, with your professional organization, some of the things that you think about in terms of ethics and privacy and the codes that you go by. Are those things that have been part of your organization for many years, is that not incompatible with the idea of learning analytics, or does analytics exist if we protect it the right way? It's okay?
Exactly, right. So that's my point, Chris. I think it's very compatible. I mean, it probably has to be tweaked somewhat, but many of those principles are things like there needs to be a benefit to the individual, in return for having access to their data. Individuals should be able to, upon request, review their data for accuracy. Maybe I mentioned no third-party sharing without authorization. So things like that seem to me to be very sensible in the learning analytics arena. I just think learning analytics as a sort of topic, as a community, there's not even a community yet. So, these kind of things have to be formulated and stated and defined.
Yep, good. Bill, when you showed your students this, I mean, obviously they know that you have access to their grades. I don't know how you collected the number of articles that they read.
Yeah, I just went into Angel and clicked on report and pasted it into Excel. And
so did they know you had access to that, and what was their reaction to you showing them their data like that?
No reaction.
Yeah.
So it's hard to read. I mean, I didn't have wailing and gnashing of teeth or anything. And no one really.
So that's the feature we disable by default in Angel. That's the
yeah, I turn it on. Yeah.
So you just have to turn it on in your course, and they get.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's okay for doing for one project.
Well,
Right, but
yeah.
right.
You're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I gave a quiz Wednesday and had an article to read for my students here, and depending on the class, somewhere between half and 2/3 read it, and I want to do something similar for that. But you go across the semester, it's really tedious. It's just, and then merging it. See, I don't really have database skills. I use like an Excel plugin to do that. And I see you laughing, and I understand, yeah.
He's not laughing at you.
Okay. No, that's fine, I understand.
Yeah.
I had a question about the data collection. And I understand it was tedious. So I'm not sure if we ever got to this level. But this is great aggregate data. I wanted to know if you had it on a student level, because that way you'd be able to see the exceptions to the rules.
Oh.
So are there, for example, any students who read a lot of articles but are failing the quizzes?
Not so much. It was, if you looked at the people that say read all 13, almost all got A's. And on the F's, there was actually some pretty good variation there, but none read more than 8 or 9 or something, I think. And other than that, it matched up closely. I was quite surprised.
And would you, I'm not sure if you have this, but would you say that you could tell their exam grade really not even based on their articles or engagement in the class, but really on what they can handle?
Maybe. I didn't do anything more than just put the table together, so I didn't do any regressions or any sort of estimates and such. But that would be interesting to see how accurate the predictions would be.
And I presume that if you did regression and you did find that there wasn't a strong correlation between articles read and grades, you wouldn't put that in front of them?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to deceive them.
Right. I do have a story to tell, and if it doesn't fit my preconceptions, I won't tell them. Oh, yeah, exactly, yes.
Janet, could you tell us a little bit about PAR? And I think that's an interesting project that's really very much related to learning analytics, and it's an example of something that Penn State's partnering on. Yeah.
Sure. PAR is a Gates-funded initiative. It started out with a proof of concept with 6 institutions. And here, this is the main website. I also have like one little handout if anyone's interested in taking that. So the proof of concept involves 6 institutions of varying kinds: for-profit, not-for-profit, 2-year, 4-year. Penn State World Campus was invited to participate about 1.5 years ago. And after some debate, we decided, yeah, we'd like to be a part of this. Penn State along with 9 others. So there are now 16 institutions who are participating in the project. The purpose of the project is to hopefully use data to predict student loss and then look for interventions that help ameliorate that problem. So what I'd like to do, and we don't have a lot of time, I just want to read you some statistics. I know I love statistics, and you probably do too. So right now, let me give you a sense of it. PAR is working with 16 institutions, and we'll have 1,700,000 de-identified student records and over 8 million institutionally de-identified course level records. And we're contributing some of that data. So let me give you an idea of the size of data we're providing to this project. On the student course level, we have about 48,000. This is Penn State World Campus only, 48,000 records. The records are collected from fall 2009. So a student becomes what we're calling a par qualified student if they are seeking a degree or a certificate, if they're credential seeking in fall 2009 or after that at Penn State World Campus. If they were previously at Penn State, those credits are actually considered transfer. Only, by the way, our institution is being considered. So we have about 18,666 records that are student term records, over 48,000 student course records. Our course catalog file contains over 2,000 records. So it's been a bit of a trial for us to collect all this data in the format that the project needs it in. There have been a lot of challenges, as you can imagine. If you're working across 16 institutions, the most fundamental definitions vary from institution to institution. So defining term becomes problematic. Some of the institutions work on 4 10-week terms. Some of them are on 7-week course sections. Some are standard semesters. There's 1 or 2 institutions that actually do rolling enrollment records. So there's been an awful lot of challenges with collecting the data, with identifying the variables consistently across 16 institutions. I have a whole list of challenges that our team has been presented with in order to collect the data. But
Where are you getting the data from?
Pardon?
What's the type of data you're collecting and where are you getting it?
A lot of it comes from the data warehouse. We've had to rely on the office's student aid because we don't have access to that data. But the Office of Student Aid has been very, very helpful. We have given them the records of the 7,000 students who are par qualifying. We've given them the student ID, and then they've given us back the information we need on their student aid packages by semester. So it's not even like what happened to them in the fall of 2009. Then it's the spring of 2010. It's the summer of 2010. Etc. So it's been a lot of work for them as well, and they've been very, very helpful. The main source is the data warehouse, but we also maintain our own static tape. We also have an internal data warehouse.
Within course records, what's the course records?
So every single course a par qualifying student has taken, along with the grade, along with the course description, along with whether or not it's a developmental education course. We have very few. We basically have 1. The start date of the course, the end date of the course, the maximum of enrollment of the course, the actual enrollment of the course. So on each course, we're providing a lot of information back to the project. At the student level, the grade in every single one of their courses. At the student level, the number of transfer credits they've taken, if they've received any prior credential. Yeah, there's a real lot. The course data itself, Penn State occasionally changes the number of a course, occasionally changes the description of a course. Some courses are cross-listed. So all of these things have become challenges for us in trying to provide very accurate data back to the project team. There will be 3 data pulls. We did our first data pull in late January. We just got back in late February the quality assurance check and places where we needed to clean it up, that were things that they had discovered looked inconsistent to them. So we've done our cleanup, we've scrubbed it again, sending it back. There'll be 2 more data pulls. The second data pull probably won't add particularly new data because we just cleaned it again. And then the last data pull will be this coming August.
You mentioned after some debate you decided to participate in PAR.
Sure.
I was just curious what some of the reasons that some people had for maybe not participating.
want to say that it was for not participating, but to make a careful decision about it. Actually, I was one of the people who posed 3 questions about, really, are we going to do this? Because it was basically the traditional age student. And the World Campus is fundamentally adult learners. So I wondered, can we really contribute to this knowledge base? Another question I had was, they were looking at a lot of developmental developmental education courses. We don't offer many. We have Math 4. That's like the only one. We had a lot of questions about security. We wanted to know that the data would be tight. So those were the kinds of we needed reassurances. And we also needed to make sure that we could contribute, because our students are not under 26 for the most part. We don't have developmental ed.
So one last question I have, because we're a little bit running out of time. Where do you see this concept of learning analytics going, maybe within the next 5 years? I think probably within the next 10 years. It's really hard to tell, but where is it going to be in the next few years? What are the potential challenges? Maybe some strategies for how we might get there. Is this going to be sort of a happy world of open data and everybody has all the insights at the tip of their fingers, or are we going to continue to struggle with access issues? And what are your kind of general thoughts in the future?
I'll try for a minute. I would just, as instructor, I just like to have things for my own class and not looking for maybe push button accuracy, but just everything in one place that I could easily extract in some fashion. I'd even be willing to learn some things to do that, but now it's just spread over all sorts of different things, very hard to get out. And if it's in one format, if I could say get an Excel spreadsheet for all my student activities during the semester in Angel, I'd be deliriously happy.
I do want to say, Terry, that the PAR project at one of the conversations revolved around, can we get LMS data? So that would really enrich the data. The student data combined with LMS data would be incredibly rich. Most institutions had not at this point. So in terms of where maybe...
Are you saying not at this point? You said most of the institutions?
I'd say so, yeah. Yeah, we agreed that, no, that's just a level of complexity.
So they're not
this was hard enough to get the 8 million,
yeah,
course records.
So they're not using it not because they won't find it useful, but because it's hard.
Yes. So in the future, if the PAR project continues to grow, I would see LMS data being added to this.
And from my perspective, I kind of think of what it's going to take to get from where we are now to where we want to be. And I think to get to where we want to be, in terms of my understanding of learning analytics, we have to have a really strong identity management capability, which we don't have right now. I mean, there's a lot of student data, but it's not connected. There's stuff in Angel, there's in various tables in the data warehouse. The financial data is separate. We can't connect that to wikis and blogs and what they're doing when they search the library. And, I mean, there's just all those kind of technical problems because universities are very hierarchical organizations, and this is a very kind of horizontal problem. We weren't designed with this in mind. Netscape probably was designed with this in mind, or iTunes, but we weren't. So we've got to kind of overcome those identity management, data mining, all those kind of technical problems. So I don't know where we'll be in 5 years. Hopefully we'll be further down the road than we are now, but it's going to be probably more challenging than people who don't work closely with this kind of information realize. I mean, Janet gave a really good specific example of why it's hard to work with data. I could give you dozens, What's a faculty member? What's a first-time student? I mean, these things are not trivial. What's a GPA? There are just so many things to work.
What's a high school?
So anyhow, it's going to be sort of fun to watch this emerge, but I think progress is going to be slow, given the size and nature of what a research university is.
Probably have room for maybe one or two more questions if you guys have any last parting thoughts.
It seems to be, we have a little bit of a range here of expertise and views on this situation. And what I'm kind of parsing out is that there there's a difference. I mean, we are talking about class level analytics or individual faculty professional development level academic or analytics and institutional level analytics. It seems to me, and I'm just posing this, but it seems to me that there are different types of ethical issues that come up with through both of these lenses. And I'm just going to pose this to you, the gentleman in the blue, and I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Sure. It's Bill.
But do you see the ethical issues of data analytics as you're using them as being any different than what an instructor or faculty member typically does?
Yeah, I think so. You could imagine that, say you're grading essay exams, you look at their analytical results, you say that student will probably be getting a B, so I won't grade the essay very closely. Back in the old days, I think before you had your ethics and such, faculty members used to be able to get student GPAs. I think that's now banned pretty much everywhere. But I would have colleagues, or at least remember one, he would say, be grading tests, and as a B student, looks like a B exam, they got a B. And so that strikes me as a very obvious ethical issue there.
Yeah, just to add, as we talked to people about analytics, one of the faculty members that we're working with had that exact same thing. He said, I don't want to know anything in the first week of the course about my students. Even if you can tell me 3 of my students are probably going to fail, don't want to know.
Yeah.
At least not until they have turned in some assessments and done some work in my class. Because he said, I might be unconsciously biased against these kids if I knew, right out of the gate.
Yeah. I think there's 2 uses. One is helping during the semester, and one is after the semester to improve the course. And then you'd probably want to know everything.
Good. Well, thank you to all of our panelists. Give them a hand. Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it.